This transfer window was always going to be a funny one, just due to the great form of Declan Rice and basically the sword of Damocles that is the pending transfer of Declan Rice away from West Ham that's sort of hanging over our necks. But I'm going to assume it's not happening yet. In fact, I don't think it would happen in this winter window anyway. If it's going to happen, it would be in the summer one. And even then, very few clubs could afford Declan Rice at the moment. But anyway, I don't want to factor Declan Rice's sale into who we're going to purchase, because armed with whatever Rice may yield, 80 million, 90 million, whatever the case may be, it makes our transfer targets very, very different to what they might be now. And we certainly do have transfer targets, if not precise personnel, positions within the squad that we want to strengthen and need to strengthen to push on, not to the next level as was promised many moons ago, but I mean, to take us from a team, 10th place team, up to a sort of 7th place team, that sort of thing, even though I know the Premier League is very, very tight. There was an article that's been doing the rounds over the last few days, which I think has missed a massive point. It's run by Sports Witness, who I think took the story from the newspaper Ligue, who are a French newspaper. Well, of course they're French. Don't sound Japanese, does it? Let's be fair. And they're running the story that Nice are interested in signing Issa Diop. Now, I think they're putting 2 and 2 together and coming up with 5. Not that I have any inside information on either Issa Diop or Nice. But it doesn't make sense because people are missing a huge trick here. What the article actually goes on to say, it's been picked up by everybody and all the newspapers, and they're sort of... It's quite funny. They're running it as if it's likely to happen. I don't think it will. I'm more than happy to eat my hat, or at least a hat made of sugar, on this channel if I'm wrong. However, the French clubs have no money now, and there's a very, very good reason for that, and that's because their TV deal has collapsed. I'll go into more detail in a moment, and it's not as boring as it sounds, I promise you. But the article says that they are either interested in... I'm just going to have a look and click this down. Either Samuel Umtiti or Jean-Claire Todibo, who are both, as far as I know, at Barcelona. So what it's saying is Nice will try and purchase one of these two players. If not, they'll buy Issa Diop. I've got to tell you, there's nothing to suggest anybody in football French football outside of Paris Saint-Germain has the necessary funds to buy anyone from Barcelona, and probably not anyone from West Ham, and certainly not somebody that cost us 23 million quid. However, it does create an interesting dynamic in terms of West Ham, or Premier League clubs as a whole, buying players from the French League. Let me just explain briefly where France is. So, the Premier League TV deal, when you put in domestic rights, which is Sky, BT and Amazon, I think they pay about 5 billion for 3 years. Then there's another 2 or 3 billion on top, which is the international rights. So whatever ESPN and beIN and all of those channels will pay to broadcast it on each continent. It yields for the Premier League about 8 billion over a 3-year period, which is what the contract's done on. French football had a contract. Now, it wasn't quite as rich as the Premier League, so their domestic TV deal was 3 billion over 4 years. That's collapsed. I mean, literally, it just collapsed. A month ago, something like that, possibly less. I think it was the start of December. The deal collapsed. The company that had the deal, the television company, went bust. The equivalent of Sky going bust is basically what happened. Now, there's been a rescue package, and somebody has come in. It's actually, might have even heard of them, French TV company called Canal Plus. You've probably seen them at the start of films and stuff like that. They've come in with a rescue package. A rescue package is about 300 to 400 million euros a season. Basically, it works out over 4 years, about half. It's less than 1.5 billion euros, which is less than half their TV deal. Now, French football was in a bit of a pickle anyway, for all the reasons that we are. They've had some fans back intermittently, not enough for a stadium to turn a profit. So they've lost all their fans' revenue. You've also got to factor in that last season, France's league was null and void. So they didn't actually produce... that was null and void. They had to pay a rebate back. Anyway, so they're skint. And when I say skint, they're really, really skint. Almost on the point of bankruptcy. for the next. It was been saying, I read this report on it, and some of it suggesting that there may be some clubs who may be even struggling to get to February because there's just no money coming in through the turnstiles. They had to give some of last year's money back, and this year's the deal has collapsed. Now, as far as I understand it, the new deal there's not been confirmed yet. I think Canal Plus, who are a massive, they're like the BBC in terms of France. Well, that's not a national broadcasting corporation. It's the big one. I think if they say they're going to provide a rescue package, they probably will. But at 300 million euros, it ain't an awful lot more than the championship get from Sky, you know. So that's where you're dealing with. And what it does, it means they can't sign Diop, basically. It's just not going to happen. If you're on the brink of bankruptcy, if you're on the brink of collapse, what you're certainly not going to do is you're not going to go and buy a player for 20-odd million or sign defenders from Barcelona or something like that. No. To actually meet next month's bills, you actually have to sell players, which changes the dynamic slightly. And now, listen, is it cutthroat? Is it ruthless? Yes. And that's what I'm about to say, which there are bargains to be had in France. Now, it might be cutthroat, it might be ruthless, and it might be taking advantage of a wounded animal in that sense, but making a transfer, an outbound transfer, if you're a French club, may well secure the survival of your club. So, it just means that, as I understand it, that far from French clubs looking at West Ham players, I think West Ham are actually looking at a few French players at the moment. I don't know who, and I don't have any information for you whatsoever at all. But us and every other Premier League club are looking and rubbing their hands at the prospect of getting some cheap players from France. Now, I had a little think about it, and so I do wonder how much all this Josh King rumour business is smoke and mirrors. It's hard to say, really. But if there is a striker, and there'll be people who watch this channel who know far more about the players who are doing well in France than I will, then it may well be that there is somebody out there who we can look to. And I look at a team and I think, well, actually, what do we need? Well, we need a striker. That is for certain. I think that's probably the key position we need most. A striker, you know what I've been saying, a striker, a mobile striker, more in the mould of what Mikel Antonio does. And you've also got to factor in Mikel Antonio. Not only is he injury prone, he's still learning on the job. He's, as much as he's an older player, he's still an apprentice striker. Let's be fair, he's not played very much of his career, a very small percentage of his career as striker. So actually a striker that can work within that mould. Left back clearly is a position that we need to look at. And I think we should, although listening to David Moyes talk up how much we're missing Arthur Masuaku at the moment certainly does indicate that he's a massive part of the future under David Moyes. And David Moyes thinks he's an integral part of West Ham, of the squad, and certainly for when he wants to play that 5 or 3 at the back. When he wants to play with wing-backs, Masuaku is a massive part of that. The centre-half one, well, you'd have to assume, bearing in mind Diop is not really featuring, he's probably still looking for a centre-half. And then, so now we go back to the guy at Marseille, Talat Hazard. 30 million quid. Well, I'll tell you what, Marseille are one of those teams who are going to be struggling at the moment, and they do have a very, very good central midfielder as well, by the way. Are they going to be more inclined to take a deal for somebody like that? And you look at West Ham, how have we gone, in terms of the mindset of the manager, how have we gone from a team that sort of desperately wanted a centre-half and were willing to pay £30 million for one, to thinking, we don't need one now? I'm not so sure. I would imagine the truth is probably somewhere in between, particularly if Diop is not featuring, and actually we are using an on-loan player from the Championship in terms of Craig Dawson, who's done it back-to-back clean sheets. Can't complain at all, can you really? But it does show that there might be an interest there in bringing in a centre-half. Maybe if Diop's stock is still high in France, there may be an opportunity to sort of almost upgrade him or something like that and see somebody in France at a club that we fancy and say, look, okay, look, we'll do a swap and we'll balance up some money or do something like that. The one that really does, I think, need addressing after the striker. The striker's the most important, is central midfield, because I do think we have this over-reliance on Declan Rice and Thomas Souček in the middle, who have been brilliant. I see the odd comments pop up now and then, you know, as a pairing, they're as good as anybody in the Premier League outside the top 6 or whatever. A bit tenuous, but I understand, and I got to say, I don't know. Are they the best pairing? I don't know. Probably not. I'm not so sure. But they're up there. They are really, really good. I think it's one thing as an opposition manager, you look and you see the West Ham team sheet, you know it's going to be those two. And you think, oh, okay, midfield's going to be a bit tough today. And that's a great thing for West Ham. But if they're out, the quality drops right off a cliff. I mean, right off a cliff. I look at other areas of the team. You know, centre-back would be one. You know, if Dawson's not there, Balbuena's there or whatever, okay, that's fine. I don't think it makes a massive difference to us. I think, you know, in terms of, you know, sort of the attacking creative midfield, you've got Ben Rama and Naughty Boy Lanzini, of course. Well, you know, they're similar type players. I don't think there's this massive drop-off that you've got there. The same, Yarmolenko's a good player, Bowen's a good player, different players, but again, you wouldn't say not one's brilliant and one's crap. I do think there's a massive drop-off in central midfield, though. Souček or Rice being out, and the quality of the midfield just changes completely. I mean, the natural one would be Noble to come in, but Noble is not playing up to that standard. I look, Thomas Souček is one of the top scoring midfielders in the league. He's one of the best goal scoring midfielders in the league. Noble comes in, he's not going to be there. He's not going to be one of the best goal scoring midfielders in the league. Declan Rice is one of the first names on the England team sheet. He's absolutely dominant in most of the games he plays. Noble's not going to come in and be an England quality player and be one of the best midfielders in the Premier League. So you have to say the quality drops. And then if it's not Noble, who's going to come in there? Well, it's going to be Snodgrass, right? Well, again, that's not... The quality is dropped significantly. I mean, you don't feel that Connor Coventry is anywhere near not only the first team plans, but even David Moyes' thoughts. And then he doesn't seem to want to play Fornals. There's a lot of us who think Fornals could play in that position. He doesn't seem to agree. I think he's very much sees Fornals as that sort of left, hard-working midfielder type. And you know what? I'd rather he didn't, but who are we to argue? Moyes is getting far more right than he's getting wrong with that. So I just look at it and think, well, maybe there is room there for a midfielder to come in. But for somebody, and I don't know, maybe because of the way France is, there's a midfielder that's worth sort of 15 million quid. You go and you get him for 7 or 8 or something like that. Helps keep the French club afloat, and West Ham get a bargain. I don't know, but I just think there are pickings to be had, and I would expect within this video people are going to suggest, because you all know the French game better than I do, and there'll be people who are going to suggest players who at certain clubs who might be able to feature for West Ham. I don't know if he's playing well anymore. I haven't looked at. I'm used to like Morgan Sanson, who was Morgan Saucisson. He's not Saucisson, but it's Morgan Sanson. It's Sanson, but it's Sanson. You've got to pronounce it Sanson. If you don't pronounce it Sanson, actually we're getting a touch of the Dembélés here, who is also in France. But I can see something happening here, actually. I just feel that there might be some business being done. And when I say business, transfer business rather than loan business, because I'm not sure how much a loan is going to help out a French club. For France itself, I mean, it's bad news. It's bad news for France. It's bad news for football. It's bad news for their league. You know, their league was disproportionately balanced in terms of finances anyway, because Paris Saint-Germain were basically pulling oil money out of the ground, and everyone else was operating on a quarter of the money. Now Paris Saint-Germain are still going to be pulling oil money out of the ground, and other clubs are going to be either going bust or 5% of the money in terms of the competitive nature of that league. I mean, it's gone, and it's going to be a massive rebuilding process for France. And I do feel for them, but whilst I'm feeling for them, I am looking at it thinking, we might have some rich pickings there, but I'm not sure. Unless it is Paris Saint-Germain, they're really going to be rich enough to get over this side and start pinching Issa Diop from West Ham United.